Today, I'm going to be teaching you how F1 esports drivers use the battery deployment within the F1 24 game to maximize both qualifying and racing potential of lap time and efficiency as well. As you can see on the bottom right hand side of the screen, I have turned away my webcam so you can see what my battery modes are during this example to help you as much as possible. Of course, before getting into this video fully, I want to talk about, let's say, a bit of a disclaimer, and that is simply, of course, I'm in a competitive environment training for F1 esports and league racing as well, so I cannot share every detailed information about the battery usage that I have, quite simply because it's sensitive information towards a competitive nature that I want to keep against the rival teams and drivers that I compete against, and I also want to be fair with the team that I'm with, of course, Sauber and RAG, to not give away information that we are working tirelessly behind the scenes to gather and make as strong as possible. So with that being said, I am truly trying my best to help you improve at the F1 24 game and make you as fast as possible, but please be respectful of the fact that I cannot give every single detail away, otherwise I would be giving away hundreds of hours of preparation and mining into detail about the F1 game and how we're trying to gain an advantage over the other teams. So with that being said though, I'm going to jump into explaining the qualifying, and then after that I'll explain how we maximize the race as much as possible. So of your battery deployment, you want to be running none, of course, on your in and out laps. On the in lap does not really matter because you're boxing anyway, but on the out lap you want to be running none on the battery, quite simply to keep the battery deployment at 100% before starting the lap. Going through the corners, you want to be using medium on your ERS mode, quite simply because it makes a bit of a derating at the end of the straight, but more importantly, because it makes the traction easier to obtain on the exit of the corner. So you can see at the end of the straight, it will make a natural derating when you're not accelerating that much anyway, and can save a few percent of the battery, but on the exit, more importantly, it is a bit easier to manage. Corners such as the middle sector in Bahrain, if we just go back into flashback mode to show you, corners that are not easily flat out and require a lift and or a brake into the apex, you want to be using medium on the ERS deployment mode again, quite simply because it will cause a derate before the corner, and that will save you a few percent of the battery, but simply as well, it will make the traction and the car more stable and easier to manage during the apex phase of the corner. So this is a good example of an apex that you would want to use medium mode on, quite simply because it's not flat out, you're not always accelerating up the corner, or during the corner I should say, that it makes it a bit more efficient to be running medium on your ERS mode. Of course, as you come down to the hairpin here, it's much more sensitive on the traction, so running medium on the ERS mode makes more and more sense to how you can maximize the traction of the car and keep the car fully under control in all scenarios. Again, in the hairpin as well. Where it starts to become a bit more complex and dynamic and changes from driver to driver and how they want to maximize the battery usage over the qualifying lap is down to the Hotlap and Overtake button within the F1 24 game. So what is basically going to happen if you only run the Hotlap mode here, you will not be able to use all of your battery's efficiency during the lap. So to gain at least 3-4 temps per lap by using the Overtake button, you can basically use that. If you don't use the Overtake button, you'll be wasting out on 3-4 temps per lap minimum, basically, and that is of course a lot of time. So how you're going to be using the Hotlap mode and the Overtake button is, of course, you're going to be in Hotlap mode down the majority of the straight, and then changing down to medium as you get towards the end of the straight before going into the corner. So you can see we're in medium mode right now, and then as we get through the corner and we're confident to go back on the power, you use Overtake button at the lower speeds on the exit of the corner. Again, back up to Hotlap once you're done with the Overtake button, back down to medium for the corner, and again back up to Hotlap on the exit. When we're going through corners that are not easily flat out, you are going to be in medium mode with the battery efficiency just to help it be that little bit better over the course of the lap. In low speed areas, anything between like 4th and 5th gear, using the ERS Overtake mode, and that can help you just get out of the corner that little bit faster. You can see basically just using the overtake button for 2 to 3 seconds per corner exit, and that's going to allow my delta and my car velocity to go faster and faster and faster as we're on the exit of the corner, compared to if we only use the Hotlap mode. Sorry, I stumbled on my words there. Basically, the thing that now you have to be careful with this is not to overconsume your overtake button, as if you look to the middle of the screen right now, you can see that a green bar is there next to our battery percentage. If you use too much of this green bar, you will run out of your allocated energy usage per lap, and that will mean that you stall on your battery usage before reaching the start-finish line. And by doing that, you'll be missing out on multiple hundreds of horsepower available to use within the car. So that is a complete disaster, and you want to avoid that, and you basically want to make it so you only just about run out of the ERS deployment with the green bar just before the start finish line. And that's what you see the F1 esports drivers doing to try and maximize it, that we are using the maximum amount of that green bar before the start finish line has arrived. One final thing on the actual battery percentages, as you can see right now it's on 47, 48, 50 as well, is once you start going below about 20% on the battery, you will start to lose a bit of power. This is quite a common thing known by F1 esports teams for multiple years, so I can say this, but I don't think it's that known within the whole community, to be honest, that once you start going below a certain number on the battery percentages, then it becomes less and less and less efficient, and that can really hinder your lap time. So with that being said, try to avoid going below 20% on the straights, as that will mean you get less battery power going down the straights as well. So you can see now we're going below 20%, and that would mean that I have less efficiency and less power available. So look to the top right hand side of the screen. Even though we're going to be using overtake button, we're going to start losing time down the delta to our top right. So we're now losing about half a tenth in the second half of that straight, even though we was on the overtake button. And that's something to remember going forward, quite simply, that if you are below that certain number threshold, you will lose out on power availability, and something to avoid. So in a key point summary, what I always advise is to be running none on your battery deployment when you're on an outlap. Quite simply, so you can charge up the battery as much as possible to 100% before the start finish line. In the corners that require a braking or a lift of the throttle, to be using medium on your battery mode, quite simply to help the stability and the derating of battery before the apex as well, and that can help your efficiency. On the corner exit, use overtake button for 2 to 3 seconds to help gain more velocity out of the corner, and then using hot lap mode after for the remainder of the straight until you reach the next braking zone, and then of course going back down to medium. Use as much of that green bar in the middle of the screen as possible, while also trying to avoid going below 20% on the total battery percentages. And if you're able to achieve those things in a very smooth, calm and precise manner, it will mean that you're able to gain easy lap time over your opponents and over your previous bests as well. So now jumping into a race to show you how I would do it there. So now jumping into a racing situation, I'm going to be showing you how I would use it generally with some attacking, defending and a general approach as well. So of course, once we've gone through the starting phase and want to start getting past the wheel spin, you start using the overtake button to try and go as fast down to turn 1 as possible, then back down to medium throughout the first apex, just because it's easier on the traction, so it makes it a bit more manageable when fighting other cars and needing to react to other cars. While I have a chance to go for the overtake, I will be using the overtake button down the straight, of course, to increase my top speed, and this can allow me the best speed possible. Going down into medium during the corners, because again, the same as qualifying, I want the traction to be a bit better, a bit more stable, and because of the derating going into the apex, it just makes the car a bit more efficient and better because of that. In majority of cases, I would not really try to use the overtake button, and I would try to stay actually with the hot lap mode as much as possible instead of the overtake button, simply because I only want to use the overtake button when I have a chance of actually overtaking a car. If I'm using hot lap mode, it's a bit more efficient. down the straights and means that I can stay nice and close to the rival cars without using too much battery. What I'm going to show you right now is if I use the overtake button down this straight and the pitch straight, we're starting on 55%. By the time we get to the end of the straight, we're only going to be on 5%. And I'm talking about the actual pitch straight as well here. So already at the end of one straight, we've used the maximum deployment during this lap. We went down to 15. So you can see already how low we are on the battery. We're losing so much time compared to the AI. And now, yeah, you can see we're completely in the mud. We're absolutely in the mud. We're down to 4% battery before the braking zone. And there's very little we can actually do. And that is why you have to be really careful with how you use the overtake button in this year's game. Because if you use it too early, too aggressively, you're going to be absolutely in the water. And there's very little to do with defending because you're going to be so slow on the straight line speed after that. To try and recover the battery as fast as possible, you would use none, and that is just putting the battery so you have no deployment and maximum harvesting, what of course is extremely slow. As you're going to see right now, you're going to see we're just going to get absolutely dumped on by the straight with the AI, and again going down this next DRS zone, and this is why you want to avoid using none as much as possible, because we're 5 tenths ahead of Oscar at the start of the straight, and by the end of the straight, he's already ahead of us by 1.5 tenths, 2 tenths even. So this is why you have to avoid using none as much as possible. So I really advise going between Hotlap and medium in the racing stints to be as efficient as possible. So Hotlap down the straights until about 7th gear. And then after 7th gear, putting it back down to medium to derate the car, and that can help your efficiency in most situations. So you can see now on the tracking zone in medium, and then going up into Hotlap on the exit. Once we get to 7th, 8th gear, then we'll put it back down. Of course, if we have to fight other cars, you can see with Perez, Piastri, none of us attacking or defending in a situation, so it's chill, it's relaxed. Then you want to be using your overtake button. But for the majority of just driving for raw lap time and not having to worry about fighting other cars, again, use Hotlap into about 7th gear and then going down to medium therefore after to help your efficiency and your stability in the corner as we go around the outside of Piastri. Thank you very much. And that can just be very nice for you in terms of making the car a bit more drivable and your efficiency on the battery that little bit better. Okay, thank you very much. So yeah, basically with the information that I can share in this video about the ERS and how it's working in the F124 game, I have done what I can basically. Of course, there's more information, there's more detail, there's more stuff behind the scenes with the battery that is so important to going fast as possible, but as I said at the head of this video, it's so important, this information for F1 esports and how we're using it to gain an advantage over different teams, different drivers as well, that I can't share too much because otherwise I'm putting my own performance at jeopardy. So at the end of the F124 game, when the battery information is already been used in the F1 esports series, I'll do a follow-up video and fully explain to you how I'm using it and how I'm maximizing it. But for now, this is the maximum information that I can share with you. So I really hope that this has been somewhat helpful to you, somewhat informative, and it can help you boost your own performance and enjoyment of the F124 game as well, both in a qualifying scenario and in a racing scenario as well. So with that all being said, thank you so much. Don't go below 20% on the battery if you can avoid it, otherwise you lose the performance of the power. And with everything, bit of oversteer. With everything, thank you so much, and I will catch you in the next video. Ciao, ciao. Bye bye.